The Sakari would soon learn that the humans they tried to make extinct were ready for vengeance. Randy Porter stirred from his deep cryogenic slumber, blinking twice as his stasis pod hissed open. Ship lights flickered on overhead. "Randy, welcome back. You've been in stasis for 300 years. We have arrived at the coordinates you set for Sakaron Prime, homeworld of the Sakari. Our long journey is over." The voice of Aiden, the ship AI, was crisp. Realization set in. The reptilian Sakari, led by that slimy slug High Chancellor Tiro, had bombarded Earth into oblivion 350 years ago. Waves of plasma fires scorched the surface. Billions incinerated in an instant. Continents cracked. Oceans boiled. The survivors scattered to the stars in beaten refugee ships abandoning a ruined planet. But not Randy. The grizzled ex-Special Forces officer rounded up 100 elite soldiers for a different mission. Vengeance, the TSS Retribution, outfitted with 5,000 crew and bleeding-edge weapons, would make the Sakari pay for their genocide. "Status report, Aiden. Are the Sakari still down there?" Randy pulled on his uniform, glancing at the lush green world on the viewport. Scans show billions of Sakari life signs on the surface. They appear to have rebuilt their civilization in the centuries since the war. I'm not detecting any orbital defenses. It seems they aren't expecting us. Good. Randy smiled darkly, checking his rifle. His family, his life, all ashes because of those scaly bastards. It was time to even the score. For Earth, for humanity. "All systems are nominal. The crew is ready at your command, sir." Aiden's blue hologram saluted. Randy's eyes narrowed, boring into the planet below, as if he could incinerate it with his stare. If this operation failed, humanity's last chance for justice died with it. The fate of the entire species, trillions of humans born and yet unborn, all rode on the next few hours. "Let's get this done, then." Randy's finger hovered over the ship intercom. "This is it, people. Time to make those Sakari regret the day they messed with the human race. Battle stations. We're going in." Randy clenched his fists as the TSS Retribution slipped into an orbit high above the lush surface of Sakaron Prime. The moment of reckoning was finally here, 3 centuries overdue. The ship's advanced stealth tech allowed it to glide unnoticed past the Sakari's planetary defense grid. "Lieutenant Briggs, you're with me. We're taking Alpha Squad planetside for Phase 1. Let's move." "Roger that, boss." Hawkeye flashed a grim smile as he checked the charge on his pulse rifle. He'd been itching for action the whole trip. The pair marched into the hangar, where 10 hardened soldiers stood at attention, kitted out with bleeding-edge weapons and armor. The best of the best, hand-picked by Randy himself. They snapped crisp salutes as Randy approached. "At ease, people. You all know why we're here. Those scaly fucks down there torched our homeworld, killed everyone we ever loved. Now it's our turn." Randy's voice was hard as steel. "There's a comm center in their capital that Aiden says is the linchpin of their whole goddamn military. We're gonna sneak into the city, knock it the fuck out, and grab any intel we can on the way. I won't lie, we'll be outnumbered as shit. But that's how it's gotta be. Questions?" Silence, just the way Randy liked it. "Good, mount up and let's get this done." The squad piled into the dropship, strapping into crash seats as the ramp sealed shut with a hiss. The hull shook as the ship detached from the Retribution, angling down towards the night-shrouded surface. Randy pulled up a hollow of the target, marking entry and exit routes. "Listen up. Spotters have an infill point for us here. 2 clicks from the objective. From there we go in quiet, take out any sentries without raising hell, demo the comm array, and bail before their QRF shows up. By the time they figure out what's happening, we'll be dust. The whole op needs to be in and out in 15 mics, tops. Got it?" "Hurrah!" the team chorused. The ship bucked as it knifed into Atmo. Randy watched the numbers on the altimeter spin down. 30,000 feet, 20,000, 10,000. This was it. No going back. The dropship flared, landing skids sinking into a clearing blanketed by strange alien foliage. The squad piled out, fanning into a perimeter, rifles up. Sakroth rose in the distance, strange spires glinting under unfamiliar stars. Randy pulled down his night vision goggles, signaling the team forward. They ghosted through the city outskirts, HUDs outlining the path ahead. Not a soul in sight. The faint glow of the Sakari military complex soon rose ahead, all high walls and guard towers. Strangely deserted guard towers. Randy's skin prickled. Something felt off. He was reaching for his comm when a klaxon split the night. Floodlights snapped on, pinning the humans in stark white beams. Pulse fire stitched the pavement. Sakari soldiers poured from every building, the night suddenly alive with plasma bolts and howling aliens. "Ambush, take cover," Randy roared. An energy blast spanged off his armor, knocking him into a retaining wall. More fire slammed the concrete around him. He glanced up to see hundreds of Sakari troops pouring into the streets, far more than Intel had predicted. They'd been made before they even hit the ground. The whole fucking up was blown. Randy ducked as a plasma bolt sizzled over his head, close enough to singe his hair. His squad returned fire, downing a dozen Sakari grunts before they could even blink. But more kept coming, pouring out of the buildings like a never-ending alien tide. "Fall back by twos. Leapfrog!" Randy barked into the comm. His soldiers started bounding backwards, one pair laying down covering fire while the next sprinted to the rear. Textbook stuff, but it was rapidly turning into a losing game. There were just too many damn lizards. A blood-curdling roar suddenly split the chaos. Randy spun to see a hulking Sakari brute storming out of the command center, clad head to toe in heavy black armor. The beast hefted a crackling plasma cannon, energy cells glowing an angry red. "It's Zatok, Commander Zatok," Briggs shouted. "Tyro's fucking enforcer." The alien colossus leveled his cannon and unleashed a torrent of star-hot plasma into Alpha Squad's ranks. Men screamed as superheated gas turned flesh to ash in a microsecond. Briggs caught a glancing shot to the shoulder and crumpled. "Lieutenant!" Randy grabbed Briggs and dragged him behind a low wall as Zatok stomped closer, the ground trembling under his tread. Briggs was pale as a ghost, blood leaking between the fingers clamped over his wound. Half the squad lay unmoving, charred and smoking. Randy keyed his comm. "All personnel, fall back to the LZ, complete the mission." Static-laced acknowledgements crackled back. Randy popped up and sprayed plasma fire at Zatok, forcing the beast to take cover. He needed to buy time. "Just you and me, you scaly fuck?" Randy muttered. So Zatok snarled and charged, cannon blazing. Randy rolled and sprinted, plasma bolts chewing up the ground at his heels. He snap-fired from the hip, peppering the alien's armor but barely slowing him. Randy vaulted through a shattered window, hitting the deck in a spray of glass. Zatok bulled straight through the wall, pulverizing concrete and rebar. Randy scrambled up, running deeper into the building. He had to complete the objective, had to lure Zatok away from his people. He ducked and wove through the corridors, a lethal game of cat and mouse with the alien juggernaut. Zatok was fast for his size and smart. It was taking every ounce of skill Randy had just to stay ahead. Plasma shots blew out walls and support beams as they traded fire on the move. The whole structure was groaning now, the ceiling sagging. "You cannot escape, ape," Zatok growled, his voice a grinding bass. "Earth will burn, your species will be meat and memory." Randy leapt up a stairwell, rolling into a crouch on the landing above. "Shut up and die, you bastard!" Zatok barreled around the corner and ran straight into the det cord Randy had strung across the hall at neck level. The blast ripped the stairwell out from under the alien, sending him plummeting in an avalanche of debris. Randy raced to the comm array, breath burning in his lungs. He slapped demo charges on every pylon, every console. The countdown winked to life. 0:30. 0:29. Zatok exploded up from the rubble below, a devil straight out of hell. Shrapnel jutted from his armor, purple ichor leaked from a dozen rents, but he still came on. Randy gritted his teeth and raised his rifle. The charges were set. All he had to do was hold the brute off for half a minute. Zatok swung his cannon like a club, smashing it into Randy's chest. Something cracked in Randy's chest as he slammed into the wall, stars bursting across his vision. His weapon skittered away. Zatok loomed over him, one eye a bloody ruin. The monster raised an armored boot the size of an engine block, ready to crush Randy's head like an egg. 003, 0002, 001. Randy kicked the alien's other knee with every ounce of strength he had left. Bone crunched. Zatok staggered. The charges detonated with a world-ending roar. The ceiling came down like the hammer of God, burying Zatok under tons of stone and steel. Randy felt the heat of the blast wash over him, followed by a rain of debris. Then darkness. He swam up from the black, every nerve on fire. Everything hurt, but he was alive. With a groan, he shoved a slab of rockcrete off his chest and staggered upright. The comma ray was nothing but a crater of twisted, smouldering wreckage. He limped towards the extraction point, one hand pressed to the pain in his side. The night was split by the shrieks of Sakari sirens and the clatter of approaching vehicles. It wasn't over. Not by a long shot, but they'd struck the first blow. Showed the Sakari that mankind wasn't a force to dismiss. Earth would be avenged. Randy would make damn sure of that. Randy's muscles screamed as he hauled Briggs's limp body into the waiting dropship, pulse fire still crackling through the night behind them. The hatch slammed shut, and the ship rocketed skyward, the G-forces crushing Randy into his seat. He looked down at Briggs, slumped next to him. A strange, spider-like device was latched onto the lieutenant's chest plate, blinking with malevolent red lights. What the hell? Hawkeye, you've got some kind of... A blinding flash seared Randy's retinas. His ears rang with Briggs's sudden, agonized scream. Briggs! Randy blinked away the spots, his blood running cold. Briggs was convulsing on the deck, limbs jerking unnaturally. Smoke curled from the edges of his armor as the device pulsed faster and faster. "Medic!" Randy shouted, dropping to his knees. He reached for the device, but it was searingly hot. Briggs's spasms intensified, his back arching grotesquely. Blood leaked from his nose, his eyes, his ears. Then, as abruptly as it began, he went still, limp. No. Randy pressed his fingers to Hawkeye's neck. Nothing. He wrenched off Briggs's helmet. The lieutenant's face was a rictus of agony, his skin blistered and cracked. His eyes stared sightlessly. Dead. The spider device detached and skittered into the shadows, leaving a blackened crater in Briggs's chest plate. The stench of charred flesh stung Randy's nostrils. "What the fuck was that?" Corporal Hicks breathed, wide-eyed. Randy's mind raced. Some kind of Sakari weapon. Something they'd never seen before. His gut twisted. What other horrors did those scaly bastards have up their sleeves? No time to dwell on it now. They had to get back to the Retribution, regroup, plan their next move. "Pilot, Max Byrne," Randy barked into the calm. "Get us back to the ship, now!" The dropship shuddered as the engines roared to full military power. Randy gripped his harness, knuckles white as they knifed up through the atmosphere. He forced himself to look away from Briggs's corpse. First Zatok, now this. The Sakari were full of deadly surprises tonight. What the hell had they gotten themselves into? The flight back to the Retribution passed in a blur. Randy barely noticed the bone-jarring thud of the dropship docking, the hiss of pressurizing airlocks. His mind reeled, trying to process everything that had happened. The ambush, Zatok, Briggs. He stepped onto the command deck in a daze. Aiden's hollow avatar flickered to life, concern etched on its translucent features. "Sir, I'm detecting elevated stress markers. Are you—" "Briggs is dead," Randy cut him off bluntly. "The Sakari, they have weapons we've never seen, some kind of energy device. Fried him right through his armor." A ripple of shock and fear passed through the bridge crew. They'd all known the risks of this mission, known that some of them might not come back. But this was something else entirely. "I have more bad news," Aiden said grimly. "Our scans of the planet have detected a massive network of tunnels beneath the surface. The Sakari are using them to move troops and equipment completely undetected." Show me, Randy growled. A holomap of Sakroth burst to life above the main display table. A glowing web of lines spread out beneath the city like a vast subterranean circulatory system. Randy's eyes narrowed. The Sakari had kept this well hidden. With a network like that, they could strike anywhere on the planet with little warning. No wonder the ambush had been so perfectly timed. But maybe, just maybe, they could use this to their advantage. Aiden, analyze those tunnels. Find me a route to their main command bunker. If they could get a team in there, hit the Sakari leadership where they lived, it could change everything. I must caution you, sir, Aiden replied. The probability of success for a direct assault is— I don't care about the odds, Randy snapped. The Sakari already burned our world to ashes. What more have we got to lose? We have to hit them hard and fast, while we still have the element of surprise. It's the only way. The AI paused, then nodded. As you wish, Commander. I'll begin working on an infiltration plan. Randy turned to the crew, his expression hardening into a mask of cold, implacable resolve. Get some rack time while you can. As soon as Aiden finds a way in, we're going back down there. We're going to make those Sakari bastards pay for everything they've done. For Earth, for Briggs, for every human life they've taken, no matter the cost. He looked back at the hologram, the pulsing lines of the tunnel network searing into his mind's eye. Somewhere down there, the Sakari High Command was hiding. Let them burrow like the worms they were. There would be no escape from the fury of the human race. Not this time. But even as he steeled himself for the battle to come, a cold sliver of dread wormed into his gut. The Sakari's new weapon, the ease with which they'd predicted the humans' moves, it all pointed to something far more sinister lurking beneath the surface of this war. Something that could shatter mankind's last hope for vengeance into 1,000,000 pieces. He shook it off. They'd come too far to turn back now. The only way out was through, and if there was some deeper evil waiting for them in those tunnels, well, they'd just have to face it head on. Humanity had spent 300 years preparing for this reckoning. They were all in, no matter where the chips fell. Randy would make damn sure of that. Commander Randy Porter clenched his jaw as he led his squad through the winding Sakari tunnels, their boots pounding on the cold metal grating. The labyrinthine network stretched for miles beneath Sakroth's surface, lit by eerie green bioluminescent panels. Corporal Hicks took point, his pulse rifle sweeping left and right. Private Chen guarded the rear, finger hovering over her plasma shotgun's trigger. The rest of Alpha Squad fanned out in a standard diamond formation, eyes sharp for any hint of scaly movement in the shadows. A platoon of Retribution Marines followed close behind, their armor black as deep space. The pounding of their boots echoed like war drums in the confined space. "Aiden, which way?" Randy sub-vocalized over the comm. 300 meters ahead, then right at the junction. The command center is approximately 1 kilometer beyond that. The AI's voice was calm as ever, but Randy could hear the undercurrent of tension. They were deep in the beast's lair now. No telling what the Sakari had waiting for them. As if on cue, plasma fire suddenly stitched the tunnel ahead, searing the walls. Sakari troopers poured out of branching corridors, their reptilian eyes glinting with malice. "Contact front," Hicks bellowed, opening up with his rifle. The Marines dove for cover, returning fire. The tunnel erupted into a storm of light and sound as human and Sakari weapons clashed. Pulse rounds and plasma bolts crisscrossed in deadly lattices. The acrid stench of ozone and charred flesh choked the air. Randy ducked as a plasma shot sizzled past his helmet, close enough to scorch the paint. He snapped off a burst from his rifle, dropping a Sakari grunt in a spray of violet ichor. "Frag out!" Chen lobbed a plasma grenade down the tunnel. The explosion shook the walls, vaporizing a cluster of Sakari in a flash of blinding light. Slowly, methodically, the humans leapfrogged forward, laying down overlapping fields of fire. Sakari bodies littered the deck, twitching and smoking, but more kept coming, hissing and snarling. "Push through, don't let up," Randy roared over the cacophony. They had to reach that command center, had to end this once and for all. A Sakari plasma bolt clipped Hicks in the shoulder, spinning him around. He hit the deck with a grunt, his rifle clattering away. "Man down!" Chen dragged Hicks behind a support pylon, slapping a trauma patch on the wound. The corporal gritted his teeth, snatching up his weapon. "Just a scratch. I'm good." He forced himself back to his feet, ignoring the seared flesh beneath his armor. Randy nodded grimly. They were all running on stims and adrenaline now. No time for weakness. Not with the fate of humanity riding on their shoulders. The squad battled their way to the tunnel junction, the Sakari resistance intensifying with every step. It was like the whole damn hive was converging on their position. As they rounded the corner, Randy's eyes widened. A massive blast door loomed ahead, emblazoned with the Sakari insignia, the command center. "Demo up, let's crack this nut." Randy motioned Chen forward. The private knelt by the door, placing a shaped charge on the seam. The squad took cover, bracing for the blast. The charge detonated with a thunderous boom, peeling the door back like a sardine can. Smoke and debris billowed out, obscuring the entrance. Randy charged through the haze, rifle leveled, and stumbled to a halt, his blood running cold. The room beyond was cavernous, lit by pulsing red lights. Rows upon rows of stasis pods lined the walls, each one containing a naked human figure. Wires and tubes snaked from the pods, plugged into the captives like macabre umbilicals. But it was the pod directly ahead that froze Randy's heart in his chest. Inside, suspended in glowing amber fluid, was a face he never thought he'd see again, a face that had haunted his dreams for centuries. "Michael!" The name tore from Randy's lips in a breathless whisper. His brother, his little brother, lost in the first terrible days of the invasion. Here, alive. Questions whirled in Randy's mind, even as plasma shots zipped past his head. What the hell was this place? What were the Sakari doing with these people? He shook off the shock, the rage and grief. It would have to wait. The mission came first, Michael and the other. He'd come back for them. He swore it in his soul. "Hicks, Chen, get these people out of here. The rest of you on me. We're taking that command center now." The squad split up, Hicks and Chen working frantically to disconnect the pods, while the others stormed deeper into the complex. Alarms blared, and emergency lights flashed as they breached the inner sanctum. The Sakari defenders fought like cornered rats, all fang and claw. The command deck devolved into a brutal close-quarters melee, plasma knives and pulse pistols flashing in the strobing light. And there, in the center of it all, barking orders from a raised dais, was a figure Randy knew all too well. High Chancellor Tyro, the architect of Earth's destruction. Randy saw red. His vision tunneled down to that one hated face, those pitiless reptilian eyes. 300 years of grief and rage boiled up inside him, a roaring tide of vengeance. He charged, hurdling consoles and blasted Sakari corpses. Tyro saw him coming, lips peeling back in a snarl. The Sakari leader drew a crackling plasma sword, the blade humming with barely restrained energy. Randy ducked under the first slash, feeling the heat of the blade singe his hair. He lashed out with the butt of his rifle, catching Tyro across the snout. Violet blood sprayed. The Sakari reeled back, shaking his head, then lunged again, sword stabbing for Randy's heart. Randy sidestepped, the blade missing by a hair. He grabbed Tyro's sword arm and wrenched, bones snapping like dry twigs. Tyro howled in pain, the sword clattering to the deck. Randy kicked it away, then slammed a fist into the Sakari's throat, crushing his windpipe. Tyro went down, choking and gasping. Randy planted a boot on the Chancellor's chest, pinning him like a bug. He stared down at the creature who had taken everything from him, hatred burning in his eyes. "It's over, you son of a bitch. You're going to pay for what you've done." Tyro glared up at him, defiant even in defeat. "You think this is the end, ape? You have no idea what's coming. No idea of the glorious ascension that awaits the Sakari race. We will—" Randy silenced him with a vicious punch to the temple. The Chancellor went limp, out cold. "Commander," The command deck is secure. We have Tyro. Corporal Hicks's voice crackled over the comm. Good work. Aiden, request immediate evac. We've got the High Chancellor and a bunch of human captives that need medical attention. Affirmative, Commander. Dropships inbound, ETA 3 minutes. As the squad regrouped, securing the unconscious Tyro and rounding up shell-shocked human survivors, Randy stared down at his captive. His mind raced with unanswered questions. What had the Sakari been doing to these people? What was their endgame? And what the hell had Tyro meant by ascension? He hauled the limp Chancellor up by the collar, giving him a rough shake. Tyro's eyes fluttered open, hazy and unfocused. What were you doing to them? To my brother? Talk, damn you! Tyro's bloody lips twisted in a mad grin. You'll see soon enough, human. When the convergence comes, when the Sakari and Ascended Ones are one, you'll all see, and you will tremble. A cold dread settled in Randy's gut. He had a feeling they were only scratching the surface of something far darker and more insidious than a mere war. The evac ships touched down, ramps slamming to the deck. Randy shoved down his unease, his burning questions. They'd won the day, saved the captives, captured the Sakari leader. That was enough for now. But as he dragged Tyro aboard the dropship, the Chancellor's final words echoed in his mind, full of ominous promise. The convergence, the Ascended Ones. What new nightmares awaited them in the depths of space? What horrors had the Sakari truly unleashed? Only time would tell, and Randy had a sinking feeling that time was swiftly running out. Randy's mind reeled as Tyro's words sank in, the Sakari leader's revelation echoing in his ears. The invasion of Earth, the genocide of billions. It had all been a preemptive strike, a desperate gambit to unlock the secrets of humanity's DNA and create a weapon against a threat even more terrifying than the Sakari themselves. The Erebus, parasitic devourers of worlds, an enemy so ancient and implacable that even the Sakari trembled before them. And the key to defeating them lay within the very genetic code of the species they had tried to eradicate. Randy's gaze flicked to the stasis pods lining the walls, the human captives suspended within. His brother, Michael, floating among them like a grotesque specimen. Rage and revulsion boiled up inside him, mingling with a dawning horror at the sheer scope of the Sakari's actions. You experimented on them, tortured them, all for this, and this weapon? Randy snarled, his grip tightening on Tyro's collar. The Sakari leader met his gaze unflinchingly, reptilian eyes glittering with a fanatic light. We did what we had to do to ensure our survival. The Erebus are coming, human. They will consume us all, unless we unlock the power of the Terminus. Your species' sacrifice will save the galaxy. Randy's fist clenched, knuckles whitening. Every instinct screamed at him to crush Tyro's skull, to avenge the countless lives lost to the Sakari's monstrous agenda. But before he could act, the command center's alarms blared to life, red light pulsing through the chamber. Commander, we have a situation. Aiden's voice crackled over the comm, taut with urgency. A massive Sakari fleet just dropped out of warp near our position. They're on an intercept course with the Retribution. Ice flooded Randy's veins. Tyro's capture had triggered some kind of failsafe, a contingency to erase any evidence of the Sakari's plans, including the human captives. They mean to destroy us all, Tyro hissed, a vicious satisfaction in his tone. The Erebus cannot be allowed to learn of our work here, cannot be permitted to claim the Terminus for themselves. If we cannot have the weapon, then no one will. Randy's mind raced, strategies and scenarios whirling through his thoughts. If he fled now, abandoned the captives and the intel they'd gathered, he might be able to escape before the Sakari fleet closed in. Live to fight another day. But if he stayed, if he dug deeper into this mystery, uncovered the full truth of the Erebus and the Terminus, it could change everything. The Sakari's invasion, as horrific as it had been, was a response to an even greater threat. A threat that could doom not just humanity, but every sentient species in the galaxy. And that threat was coming, hurtling towards them from the void even now. Randy's jaw tightened, resolve hardening in his chest. He couldn't run from this, couldn't leave his brother, leave any of the captives to whatever fate the Sicarii had in store. And if there was even a chance that the knowledge locked within this facility could turn the tide, could give them a fighting chance against the oncoming darkness. He had to try, for Earth, for Michael, for every soul the Sicarii had sacrificed in their desperate bid for survival. He keyed his comm, the link to the retribution crackling to life. "Aiden, patch me through to the bridge. We've got a change of plans." As the AI's acknowledgement filtered back, Randy turned to his squad, the weight of the coming battle settling on his shoulders like a mantle. "Get the captives prepped for evac. We're not leaving them behind." His gaze bored into each soldier, implacable and unwavering. "And get ready to dig in. We're about to have the fight of our lives on our hands." He glanced back at Tyro, the Sicarii leader's eyes widening in surprise and fury. "You wanted a weapon to fight the Erebus?" Randy growled, a grim, battle-ready smile splitting his face. "Looks like you've got one." He slammed a fresh power cell into his rifle, the weapon humming to life in his hands. The Sicarii fleet was closing fast, the retribution readying itself for a battle it couldn't hope to win alone. But down here, in the heart of the enemy's stronghold, Randy and his team had a chance to change the odds, to uncover the secret of the terminus and turn it against the oncoming storm. It was a desperate gambit, a last-ditch roll of the dice, but it was the only play they had left. Randy lifted his rifle, the weight of the weapon a cold comfort in his hands. "Lock and load, people. We've got a galaxy to save." As the squad moved out, racing to secure the command center against the coming onslaught, Randy spared one last glance at the stasis pods, at Michael's still face behind the glass. "I'll come back for you, little brother," he whispered, a solemn oath in the thrumming air. "I promise." Then he turned, steeling himself for the battle to come, and plunged into the heart of the storm. Randy's jaw clenched as he made his choice. The Erebus threat loomed over them all, a darkness that could devour the galaxy whole. This was bigger than humanity's war with the Sicarii, bigger than vengeance. He had to see this through, for the sake of every living being in the cosmos. "Hicks, Chen, get the captives and Tyro to the evac point. Get them to the retribution." Randy's voice was steel. "I'm staying to find out what I can about this terminus weapon." "Boss, you sure about this?" Hicks's brow furrowed with concern. "Dead sure. Now move. That's an order." The squad hustled to comply, herding shell-shocked humans and a restrained Tyro towards the extraction zone. Randy turned back to the Sicarii databanks, fingers flying over the controls. Coordinates flashed on the screen, a location deep in Saccharon Prime's wastelands, the ruins of an ancient alien civilization where the terminus lay hidden. It was a long shot, but it was the only lead they had. Randy sprinted through the war-torn streets, plasma fire streaking overhead as the Sicarii fleet rained destruction from above. He reached a squat Sicarii ground transport, its driver slumped over the controls, a smoking hole in his scaly head. "Sorry, pal, need to borrow this." Randy hauled the corpse aside and fired up the grav engines, the vehicle lurching into motion. He pushed the accelerator to the floor, alien metal groaning in protest as the transport rocketed into the wastes. Chunks of ferrocrete and twisted metal flew past, the detritus of a world at war. Plasma blasts pocked the ground to either side, the Sicarii targeting him from orbit. Randy wrenched the controls, swerving and juking, clinging to his seat as the transport threatened to flip. A near miss sheared off the transport's left grav pad, sending it into a wild spin. Randy fought with the controls, teeth gritted, muscles straining. At the last second, he regained control, the smoking ruin of the vehicle skidding to a stop at the base of a towering mesa. Randy leapt from the sparking wreckage, sprinting for an obsidian archway set into the rock face. Glyphs in an alien language glowed with sullen red light, pulsing like a heartbeat. He plunged into the cool dark of the tunnel beyond, the sounds of battle fading behind him. The air smelled of stale eons and ozone, his bootsteps echoing in the preternatural silence. The tunnel opened into a vast cavern, its walls lined with pulsing conduits and glowing consoles. And there, in the center of it all, a pillar of scintillating blue crystal that made Randy's eyes water to look upon. The terminus, it could only be. As he approached, a figure flickered into existence before him. A hologram, translucent and shot through with static. Its form was vaguely insectoid, all shimmering carapace and multifaceted eyes. "Human, you have come far to find what lies within." The alien's voice was a buzz of sound, the words precise and clipped. "Who are you?" Randy dropped his rifle to low ready, finger hovering over the trigger. "I am Kaizak of the Thrulka, the last of those who forged the terminus long ago." The hologram flickered, steadied. "And you are the key." Randy's brow furrowed. "Key, what are you talking about?" Kaizak's mandibles clacked, a gesture that might have been the approximation of a weary sigh. "The Erebus are not as you believe, not a single race, but many. A cancer upon the stars, consuming all in their path. The terminus was our last hope to scour them from the galaxy." The alien waved a claw, and the air shimmered with ghostly images. Planets crumbling to ash, suns guttering out like candle flames, writhing, amorphous shapes glutting themselves on the entrails of worlds. An entire star system sacrificed to power its matrix, a weapon to break the cycle of extinction. But such power, it was too much for any one race to wield, too easy to abuse. The images changed, focusing on a double helix of coruscating light. "And so we split the key, encoded it in the very genes of a species yet to be, one whose evolution we had foreseen, yours, child of Earth." "Humanity," Randy breathed, the pieces falling into place. The Sakari's obsession with human DNA, the experiments, it all made a sickening kind of sense. "Yes," Kaizak's eyes glittered. "And now here you stand, the key, the catalyst, a chance to light the forge once more, to bring an end to the Erebus and free a galaxy from their hunger." Randy looked to the terminus, his heart pounding in his ears, the fate of every living thing, every world yet unborn, all of it hanging on this moment, on him. He stepped forward, reaching out to the shimmering crystal. Its surface was cold, almost shockingly so. He could feel it, a tingling in his cells, an electric potential building. The key turning in an impossible lock. Light, blinding and brilliant, filling the chamber. The hum of awakening power, rising to a deafening crescendo. And at the heart of it all, Randy, screaming as the energy ripped through him, remaking him, the genetic chains of eons shattering in the crucible of the now. Randy's hand shook as he reached for the terminus, the weight of the alien's revelation crashing down upon him. The fate of humanity, of the entire galaxy, rested on his shoulders. He took a deep breath and placed his palm on the shimmering surface. Instantly energy surged through his body, setting every nerve alight. The terminus pulsed and hummed, its glow intensifying. It was working. The ground suddenly heaved beneath Randy's feet, as a deafening explosion rocked the chamber. Dust and debris rained down, the ancient stones cracking. Sakari forces poured through the breach, plasma rifles blazing. At their head strode a nightmare-made flesh, Zatok, his armor rent and scorched, half his face a twisted ruin of metal and meat. A vicious plasma cannon had replaced his ruined arm, its barrel glowing hellish red. "Zatok!" Randy snarled, dropping into a combat stance. "You just don't know when to stay dead." The Sakari commander let loose a bone-shaking roar and charged, cannon spitting sun-bright bolts. Randy dove and rolled, the superheated plasma sizzling over his head. He came up firing, his rifle bucking in his grip. But Zatok shrugged off the hits like raindrops, his patchwork body more machine now than flesh. He barreled into Randy, slamming him against the terminus with bone-breaking force. Randy gasped, vision sparking, feeling his ribs crack. His gun skittered away. Zatok pressed the cannon to his head, the barrel hot enough to blister skin. "Die, ape!" the monster growled, finger tightening on the trigger. A flicker in the corner of Randy's pain-blurred vision, the alien hologram gesturing frantically at the terminus. Still charging. Needed more time. With a roar, Randy grabbed Zatok's cannon and wrenched. The shot went wide, pulverizing ancient stone. He headbutted the Sakari, feeling the satisfying crunch of cartilage, and kicked him away. Zatok staggered back, shaking his head like an enraged bull. Randy snatched up his rifle and unloaded into the brute, aiming for the joints, the gaps in his patchwork armor. Sparks flew and viscous ichor sprayed, but still Zatok came on. All around them, human and Sakari forces clashed in a maelstrom of plasma fire and screams. The air reeked of ozone and charred flesh. The ruins shuddered and groaned, millennia-old supports crumbling under the onslaught. "Randy!" The alien hologram flickered at the edge of the melee. "The Erebus are coming. You must hold them off until the terminus reaches full power." Randy gritted his teeth and redoubled his efforts, pouring every ounce of his enhanced strength and speed into the fight. He was a dervish of lethal motion, rifle cracking and fists flying. But for every Sakari he put down, 2 more seemed to take their place, and Zatok was an implacable juggernaut, shrugging off wounds that would have dropped any other creature. A plasma bolt clipped Randy's shoulder, sending him spinning. His rifle clattered away, its barrel warped and glowing. Zatok loomed over him, cannon leveled at his heart. "Now you die, human," the brute rumbled, triumph glinting in his cybernetic eye. Randy looked past him to the terminus. Its glow was blinding now, the thrum of its power shaking the very air, almost there. His gaze flicked to Zatok's cannon, to the thick cable connecting it to the monster's shoulder. Power cable. An insane idea crystallized in his mind. Moving faster than he'd ever moved before, Randy lunged. His hands closed around the cable. He wrenched with all his might. The cable ripped free in a shower of sparks, Zatok howling in sudden agony. Randy rolled to his feet, the cable clutched in his fists, live current crackling along its length. He swung it like a whip, the severed end trailing blue fire. It wrapped around Zatok's neck, the monster convulsing as electricity ripped through him. Randy pulled, dragging Zatok off balance. He spun, building momentum, and flung the Sakari into the massed ranks of his soldiers. Bodies flew like rag dolls, the cable lashing and coiling like a living thing. Plasma fire seared the air, whole squads of Sakari falling under the friendly fire onslaught. The few that survived broke and ran, their morale shattered. Randy dropped to his knees, gasping, the cable tumbling from his blistered hands. It was over, he'd done it, bought the time they needed. Behind him the terminus reached crescendo, its light searing, blinding, burning away all shadow. The alien hologram spoke, its voice trembling with something almost like awe. "It is done. The Erebus will be scoured from the stars. The sacrifices of my people, of yours, will not be in vain." It turned to Randy, eyes ancient and unfathomable. "We place the fate of the galaxy in your hands, child of Earth. Use this power wisely." Randy rose unsteadily, his body one great ache, and looked upon the terminus. The power to break worlds, to save them. An awful, terrible responsibility. But for the sake of all those lost, all those still to come, he would bear it, he would fight. For Earth, for humanity, for the light. Randy cried out, his hands shaking as the terminus surged with blinding power. The chamber quaked, ancient stones cracking and crumbling. Dust rained down, choking the air. The alien hologram flickered, its form guttering like a candle flame in the maelstrom of energy. "The fate of the galaxy now rests in your hands," it intoned, voice fragmented by static. Then it vanished, leaving Randy alone with the awakening weapon. He gritted his teeth, pouring every ounce of will into the terminus. The device bucked and writhed in his grip, alive with world-shattering potential. Light seared his eyes, brighter than 1,000 suns. With a final, deafening roar, the terminus unleashed its power. A tsunami of incandescent blue fire erupted from the crystal heart, vaporizing rock and metal alike. It punched through the chamber ceiling, a pillar of star-hot plasma stabbing into the sky. Randy staggered back, shielding his face from the searing glare. The ground heaved like a storm-tossed sea, throwing him to his knees. He could only watch in stunned awe as the terminus fire expanded, a ravenous globe of destruction swallowing kilometers with each passing second. The Sakari fleet, still pummeling Sakharon Prime from orbit, vanished in a heartbeat. Warships and fighters alike disintegrated, reduced to less than ash before they could even scream. On the planet's surface, legions of Sakari soldiers were annihilated in the blink of an eye, their flesh and armor alike flayed away by the apocalyptic blast. But the terminus energy didn't stop there. It hurtled into space, riding the currents of gravity and dark matter like a vengeful tide. Faster than light, faster than thought, it raced across the stars, a wildfire of cleansing destruction. On 1,000 worlds, 1,000 battlefields, the Erebus writhed in sudden, shocked agony. The parasites had only a fraction of a second to comprehend the doom hurtling towards them before it struck. Their bodies ignited like grease-soaked rags, alien flesh crisping and crumbling and blowing away on the stellar wind. Their screams echoed across the void, a billion voices raised in uncomprehending terror and then abruptly silenced. For one glorious, terrible instant, the entire galaxy blazed blue, a beacon of righteous devastation. The fire of the terminus scoured away the darkness, the cancerous blight of the Erebus purged at last. Then, as quickly as it began, it was over. The light faded, the celestial conflagration dimming back to the usual faint glimmer of far-flung suns and nebulae. The terminus itself fell dark and lifeless, its power expended. Randy staggered back to his feet amidst the settling rubble of the shattered chamber. His face was blackened, his hair singed, his armor pitted and scarred. But he was alive. He thumbed his comm with a trembling hand. "TSS Retribution, this is Commander Porter. Mission accomplished. The Erebus, they're gone. It's over. Requesting immediate extraction." As the confirmation crackled back, Randy slumped against the dormant bulk of the terminus. The weight of it all crashed down on him like a physical thing. The lives lost, the worlds saved, the sheer staggering scope of what he had done, what he had been forced to do. He was a hero, a savior, the man who had single-handedly brought low the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. But in that moment, waiting alone in the ruins with the stench of ozone and ash heavy in his nostrils, he felt very small and very tired. The battle was won, the war was over. But as Randy watched the first glint of the approaching dropship knife through the smoke-choked sky, he couldn't shake the feeling that his true trials were only just beginning. The dropship docked with the TSS Retribution, the airlock hissing open. Randy stepped onto the command deck, his face a mask of exhaustion and grief. The weight of all he had seen, all he had done, hung heavy on his shoulders. But as he looked up, he saw the faces of the crew, the survivors of humanity's last stand. They stared at him in awe, in reverence. Whispers rippled through the room. "He did it. He killed the Erebus. The hero of the galaxy." Applause erupted, a roar of triumph and relief. They surged forward, clapping him on the back, shaking his hand. Randy stood amidst the adulation, numb and hollow. It was Aiden who broke the celebration, his avatar flickering to life on the main display. "Commander Porter, I'm detecting massive gravitational anomalies across the sector. The fabric of space-time is destabilizing rapidly." Randy's head snapped up, dread coiling in his gut. "What are you talking about?" "The terminus, sir. The energy release. It's causing widespread disruptions. Wormholes, singularities, quantum fluctuations on a scale I've never seen." The ship suddenly shuddered, alarms blaring. Crew members stumbled, grabbing for support. The lights flickered, main power failing. "Report," Randy barked, steadying himself on the command chair. "We've lost main engines," a technician shouted over the din. "Life support failing, the hull, it's starting to buckle." Another tremor rocked the ship, consoles exploding in showers of sparks. The viewport showed a maelstrom of swirling colors and lights, the very fabric of reality twisting and warping. "To abandon ship," Randy roared. "All hands to the escape pods." The crew scrambled, A mad dash for the pod bays. Randy sprinted for the med bay, his heart pounding. Michael, he had to get to Michael. He burst through the doors, scanning the room frantically. And there, on a gurney, a still shrouded form. No, Randy breathed, stumbling forward. He pulled back the sheet, revealing Michael's pale, lifeless face. No, no, no. The ship heaved again, metal screeching in protest. Randy bowed his head, hot tears stinging his eyes. His brother, the one he'd fought so hard to save, gone. There was no time to grieve. He had to move, had to get off this death trap before it tore itself apart. He staggered to the escape pods, the last one waiting. As he strapped himself in, he looked back one last time at the Retribution, the ship that had been his home, his purpose. Now it was a dying husk, consumed by the forces he had unleashed. The pod jettisoned, rocketing away from the disintegrating ship. Randy watched through the viewport as the Retribution crumpled in on itself, vanishing into the swirling vortex of a newborn wormhole. And then the pod was yanked off course, drawn into the gravitational pull of the anomaly. Colors and lights strobed around him, a kaleidoscope of chaos. He felt himself stretching, compressing, his atoms pulled apart and slammed back together. When it finally stopped, when the pod stabilized and the viewport cleared, he saw stars. Unfamiliar stars in patterns he'd never seen. He was lost, adrift in an unknown expanse of the cosmos. With shaking hands, he activated the distress beacon, the pod's systems coming to life. A futile gesture, perhaps, the chances of rescue, of ever seeing another human face again. But he had to try, he had to hope. It was all he had left. As the pod drifted through the alien void, Randy slumped back in his seat, the magnitude of all that had happened crashing down on him. The Erebus, defeated at the cost of his own brother. The Terminus, a supposed salvation that had instead unleashed untold devastation. And humanity scattered to the winds, its fate uncertain. He had won the war, but the price, gods, the price. He closed his eyes, exhaustion and grief dragging him down into a fitful, dreamless sleep. And the pod floated on, a mote of metal and polymer lost in the vast, uncaring expanse of space. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.